Nothing's happening.
Let's
There it
see.
is.
You are now
I'm
live.
on. I'm live. Okay. Hold on one second. Hi, everybody. This is Jamie Koufman, Dr. Jamie Koufman, and this is my reflux hour. I have a new computer, and I hope I don't have any problems. We're going to do 30 minutes. I am looking for a new format. When I do such as Dr. Radio and their call-ins, and it's more interactive. That's very appealing to me. So in the future, a few things I'd like to do in terms of announcements. I am going to give a brief overview of how laryngopharyngeal reflux would help steer the improvement of healthcare and decreased costs in America. And I've given some of this before. And then I'm going to go straight to answering questions. I've looked at Q&A and I've got 3 pages of them. In the future, they're all going to be pretty much LPR, now respiratory reflux Q&A, because I can really cover all the topics without giving a speech. I'm also going to move to once a month. We're going to do these the first Wednesday of the month at noon. At November 2nd will be the next one. And that is the birthday on which I turned 75, 3/4 of a century. So that will be the next one. And what I've done since the last time we were together is I've actually taken all the important questions off your Facebook and then organized them so that I have them here. Before I get to questions, I want to face what is a really difficult reality. There's sort of been a perfect storm. The evolution of the medical specialties, ENT and gastroenterology and all of them, pulmonology, they've all come since around 1960 something. Fast food came around 1960 something. Acidic beverages in soda machines available everywhere came in the 60s. Obesity epidemic is new. Diabetes epidemic is new. Reflux epidemic is new. And I remember Dr. Parsons saying that he thought reflux could affect sinuses and cause sinus disease 25 years ago. And I didn't know the answer to that. And everybody made fun of him. And they're probably making fun of me now. But there's no question, now that I've seen so many patients, that respiratory reflux, and if you think about the respiratory tract, okay, so you got ears, nose, throat, sinuses, voice box, trachea, bronchial tubes, and lungs. So any part of the respiratory system can be affected by reflux. It can be causative. It can cause breathing problems. It can cause sinus disease. Or it can accelerate. I had a patient who had a relapsing polychondritis or slow indolent disease, and it was rapidly progressive. And I said, you must have reflux. So reflux can be an accelerant. So the problem is now, how big is it? And 4 out of 5 people with asthma don't have asthma. If you have trouble breathing in, you have reflux, not asthma. We're talking here about $80 billion a year. If I'm right, 55 billion of that is wasted on mistreatment and misdiagnosis and mistreatment. And then we have sleep apnea and snoring. You have to have silent reflux for 20 or 30 years before you develop snoring and sleep apnea, particularly in a woman. So now we're talking about lung disease, sinus disease, throat disease, cancer of the larynx, and the esophagus. So now respiratory reflux becomes this gargantuan public health problem about which most doctors know nothing, and partially because they're too specialized. I used the metaphor before. Imagine building a house with no general contractor, and the plumber comes in and says, ooh, every room needs a sink. And the electrician says, oh, we need sconces and overhead lights and chandeliers. And And the carpenter said, "Ooh, we need beautiful custom-made bookshelves everywhere." So imagine building a house with no general contractor. So what this does is this makes the cost of health care dramatically more. So all of you people who have reflux know this. For every one of you that's got heartburn and esophageal reflux, there are 3 more that have respiratory reflux. That's all of you with snoring and sleep apnea and sinus disease and all these asthma and so on. It's all on my website. So what it means is there's 100 million people out there and they can't get a doctor. Once the GIs hijack reflux, they got a multi-billion-dollar business. They stick scopes down people. They own the facilities. They take biopsies from the stomach. Everyone has gastritis. And so that they are effectively no longer in the reflux game. And then everyone gets Nexium or some other proton pump inhibitor. But so if the go-to doctor is essentially ignorant about respiratory reflux, which is the biggest problem in America in terms of these diseases, then the poor lung doctor, the pulmonologist, the ENT. So how do we solve this problem? Well, let me go back and say, I believe healthcare is a right. And so let's just say we wanted to make Medicare for everybody. If we did that, we would bankrupt the country. The gross national product, 80% will go to healthcare. The reason is people make money. So until you control costs, you can't really expand healthcare for everyone in the nation. So the problem boils down to Medicare. And imagine this table. And around the table are people who know what the budget is, and let's just say it's a zero-sum dollar. So if we give 15 cents to gastroenterology for doing endoscopies, and we give 12 cents to ENTs or 3 cents, whatever it is, we divide up the pie. What's happened is who sits at that table? The only people who sit at that table are stakeholders. I did transnasal esophagoscopy. It is the way to go. Putting people to sleep to do endoscopy and reflux. But you can't find anybody to do it. You know why? The gastroenterologists were being audited, and they got transnasal esophagoscopy in, and they got the reimbursement pulled down to less money, and they got a facility fee. Neither of those things should have happened. So there's an example of corruption where people were representing their own interests. But imagine now that sitting at that table in Medicare are all these, quote, experts in the field. Well, they're also the presidents and people in their academies. And their number one job is to maintain the income of their members. And if they do something that hurts their members, they're gone and they'll be replaced. So what you have sitting at that table are stakeholders. And so the way to decrease healthcare costs, in my opinion, so remember, reflux is not a microcosm, it's a macrocosm of how to fix the problem. So many of my patients have seen allergists, otolaryngologists, pulmonologists, gastroenterologists, 19 doctors, some of them with chronic cough. So what you need to do is to re-empower the primary care physician. We are going to, don't you want a smart, well-paid patient doctor who doesn't get $17 for Medicare visit, to be able to be your doctor who has your back? You'll choose him or her. And they will be a gatekeeper. They will have to learn, however, integrated air digestive medicine. So all these diseases the specialists can't manage, so sinusitis and allergies and asthma and reflux and chronic bronchitis, integrated aerodigestive medicine. Aero, the respiratory system, and digestive medicine are one. So the way to save $1 trillion coming out of the gate is to bring the primary care physician back, pay them $300,000 a year, or somewhat less, I suppose, if they leave someplace rural where it costs nothing, and a little more if they live in New York. Pay them well, and then train them in integrated aerodigestive medicine. That curriculum I'm working on, have been working on for a very long time. It's sort of what I do. So I am allergist, otolaryngologist, pulmonologist, and gastroenterologist rolled into one. So the only way to make healthcare for all is to reduce healthcare costs. The way to do that is to get stakeholders out. The final problem is Citizens United. Citizens United said you can give any amount of money to a candidate. And so if you're getting $400,000 and you're in Congress from pharmaceutical industry and another $300,000 from whatever, United Healthcare, you're going to be hard-pressed to vote against them in Congress. So the only thing that you can do that's really important is we need to get rid of United Healthcare. In my opinion, we ought to do a constitutional amendment that says the following. The maximum amount of money that may be given to a political candidate by an individual or organization is $100, and it must be put on the internet for all the world to see. And we'd get these multi-billionaire kind of influence gone. So Citizens United is a big problem. Congressional corruption. Basically, Citizens United made bribery legal. So those are the big issues. Those are bigger issues than me. There will be a time when I will want to get inside Congress. I used to have an office in Washington. I took care of a fair number of people in Congress. And so understand that you people who have respiratory reflux, LPR, which is most of you, aren't going to find a doctor. That what specialists do best in this realm is basically make money. So it may not be a rosy picture, but it's certainly how I see it. What does that mean for you? That means, by the way, for everyone, the June before COVID, I gave a keynote speech at Boston University School of Medicine, and I knew there'd be laymen in the audience. It's called The New Field of Integrated Aerodigestive Medicine. It's 40 minutes. It's a real deal. It says a lot of the things I'm talking about now in terms of reorganization of healthcare and who's going to do IAM, Integrated Aerodigestive Medicine. But YouTube, Koufman, New Field of, and it'll come up. It's particularly important that physicians see that and decision makers in Congress, in my opinion, because what it represents is are diseases that affect half the American population. So with that said, in today's world, you're going to have to learn how to take care of yourself. You're not going to get any, if you, I've said it many times, if you have LPR and you go to a gastroenterologist, you might as well talk to a tree. But it's not in the curriculum of the lung doctor or the ENT doctor. So it's catch what catch can. So I'm going to start answering questions in a minute, but I'm going to tell you that lecture, the Integrated Aerodigestive Medicine, is the most important work. I'm working on that now. I'm working on a book on respiratory reflux, and there'll be a chapter toward the end, Integrated Aerodigestive Medicine, and how to improve healthcare for all, which will focus on reflux, which also then reflects upon diet and lifestyle and obesity and everything else. So there's going to have to be a paradigm shift. I have been a lone, intrepid warrior for 45 years. And I'll tell you something about paradigms and paradigm shifts. A paradigm is a set of assumptions and beliefs about a part of the world, in this case, healthcare. When someone comes along with a paradigm shift, they're treated like heretics until a critical mass of people have the new paradigm, and then the old paradigm gets thrown away. But one of the characteristics of the new paradigm is it explains everything that was in the old paradigm plus more. So what I've been talking about here is a paradigm shift, and these things are not probably going to happen in my lifetime. But I think that this is sort of where we need to go, and the primary care physician is going to have to be your number one doctor if this is going to work. Now, that means my website is a big resource for you. I keep getting questions that are already answered on my website. I get questions all the time. Is alkaline water safe? Alkaline water is safe. You can't drink too much alkaline water. Alkaline water comes out of the ground in Florida and Louisiana, and everybody drinks it for their whole lives. There's no downside to alkaline water, period. Okay? End of story. So let's talk about some of these questions and understand that as we go through them, I'm going to try to address the questions So can someone please tell me, this is Dee Dee, which Gaviscon Advance is the best to take? The liquid aniseed. So the answer is here. This is the best product available. It's Gaviscon Advance Aniseed. This is a 500 ml bottle. You don't have to buy it on Amazon. My site has links everywhere to it. But you could go Gaviscon Advance, and that's the name of the product, Aniseed, and a 500 ml bottle, and probably find a place that'll sell it to you for half. Gaviscon is taken before exercise and after meals. It's an alginate. It forms a raft, and it goes to the top of the stomach and helps block up the lower esophageal sphincter. In people with silent reflux, it's mostly nighttime reflux, taking and drinking it out of the bottle. A slug, which is about 2 teaspoons, after dinner and before bed. People love it and say, I didn't really start to turn the corner until my Gaviscon came in. So that's how you take Gaviscon. Don't put it in the refrigerator. Don't try to use a spoon. Your stuff's so thick. So it is the Gaviscon Advanced Aniseed. And people ask me about Reflux Gourmet, and the jury is still out. Until I know more, Gaviscon Advanced Aniseed is the best product we have. The second question I have, I'm talking about these are the smaller issues, relates to these spray bottles. Now, the article the spray bottle is in is how do you get rid of pepsin? And most of that article is devoted to we're working on anti-pepsin drugs. For example, you'd spray and you wouldn't get binding of pepsin, you'd kill pepsin. That's probably would be the number one product, and you could take a pill. It won't make all the pepsin go away. You don't need pepsin. There are plenty of digestive enzymes. So even if you did get rid of all your but you're not going to get rid of all your pepsin. But anyway, the first half of the article is about fossampirenavir and the products we're working on now. Nikki Johnston at University in Wisconsin Medical College in Milwaukee. And but the second half is about this. So I'm going to explain this quickly, because I know there's a lot to cover, and time is short. Alkaline water is wonderful, particularly for the places it hits. The alkaline water should be pH 9.5 or higher. I recommend this pitcher. This is my Sierra water pitcher. And I'm trying not to make a big spill here because I need some more water. This little Canadian lady, probably made her wealthy, who knows, sells these pitchers, and what you have in here, it looks like a Brita pitcher, but it's actually just calcium carbonate, and it makes pH 9.5 water, which is perfect. I love it. I drink it. I don't have reflux anymore, but I've been drinking it for years. Some part of me believes it's probably good for your bones and other stuff too, but your pH stays 7.4 in your blood no matter what you drink, pretty much. So maybe it changes something somewhere else. But anyway, cheers. When you drink water, you don't get any on your vocal cords at all. And you don't get any in most of your lower throat. And the reason is it clamps shut tighter than your fist. Why does it do that? So you don't aspirate, so you don't have the water going down the wrong pipe into your lung. Same as food. You don't want to have basically, your oatmeal in your lung. So that's a problem. Now, when you read about what is pepsin, by the way, it's all about pepsin. Acid activates pepsin. Pepsin dies at around pH 8.8. I have an awful lot of singers on Broadway and the Met who have been using these for years. So I took my 9.5 water and I put it in here. Now, and I've done this once before. I just sprayed my vocal cords, my valve area. Now, for those of you who've got nasal symptoms, this, and by the way, there's a link to buying these on that How Do You Get Rid of Pepsin website. This company also makes nose droppers you can buy. So, or you could go buy cheap nose drops, dump them out, and fill them with alkaline water. If you've got nasal symptoms, nasal congestion, and so on. It's very interesting. With the nose drops, I've had people say that they burn. And what it turns out is you got to have really bad reflux because alkaline water doesn't make anything burn. Some kind of a war going on with the pepsin. So when the pepsin is more gone or the reflux is better, that goes away. So so to answer your question, alkaline water doesn't cause burning throat. Alkaline water doesn't cause problems with your acid balance and acid-base balance in your body. Alkaline water is really good for reflux because the only thing we have that's high pH, that's completely safe, and I am now. You get swollen vocal cords and you're doing 8 shows a week on Broadway and your reflux gets bad. They're using this like nobody's business. I mean, put it on the table at the restaurant. Okay, so that's the questions about Gaviscon and the spray and the nose dropper. The alkaline water is safe, and the Sear water is on both my blogs. There are 2 blogs on alkaline water. I answered this question in part before. George wants to know, how do you treat pepsin? It reaches the ears and eustachian tubes. So the eustachian tubes, which basically give you pressure equilibration in your ear, every time you swallow you hear a click, that's eustachian tube opening. The eustachian tubes get swollen. So you can have a pressure in the ears, pain in the ears, tinnitus, some people like all these ear symptoms. Now, the nasopharynx, that's the highest part of the throat, the nose throat, the nasopharynx, is way up here, okay? And so that's a good one for nose drops and spray. We try to get the stuff in and get as much. So the spray will be helpful. You could take alkaline water and put it in an atomizer or vaporizer and breathe that. And the vaporizing thing works. So you could breathe alkaline water, and that would get your whole respiratory system. Remember, pH 9.5 is recommended. So the question, how do you get rid of it? Well, if you stop reflux for 3 weeks and or you're spraying with alkaline water on pH 9, it takes about 2 weeks for it to wash out, for it to go away. And maybe 3 weeks, but it doesn't stay there forever. If there's no acid to keep it going, eventually there's a lot of turnover in these cells. They rapidly turn over and heal. So the answer is pepsin is not permanent, reflux is not permanent, inflammation is not permanent, and it's doable with all the stuff that I'm recommending. It's a lot of stuff. So Jessica wants to know, if GIs are useless when it comes to LPR, how do we find and fix the root cause if the problem starts in the gut? Well, the problem doesn't really start in the gut. Okay, everybody makes acid. Everybody has pepsin. Okay, it's 100%, except unless you have pernicious anemia or have had a gastrectomy. So the problem is the lower esophageal sphincter. Once the lower esophageal sphincter gets swollen and stiff, you got more reflux, and reflux is a vicious cycle, and eventually the esophagus gets lazy and the upper valve kicks out. So the answer is that some ENTs are good at reflux and some aren't. It depends upon where they trained. Ironically, those who trained at Harvard and Vanderbilt seem to know less about reflux than those that trained other places. So it depends upon who was the head of laryngology. And you want a laryngologist if you really have a problem. A laryngologist is someone who specializes in laryngology in the throat. So it's not a gut problem. So let me do with SIBO. SIBO doesn't affect LPR. I think SIBO is a little bit of a crock, personally. So I won't claim that I know all about it. But when I have people who have reflux, fix their reflux, and the gut problems seem to take care of themselves. George wants to know, famotidine before each meal and before bed is recommended. Is this forever until symptoms improve? Would you taper off H2 antagonists? Great question. There are 2 H2 antagonists. Famotidine, I recommend 20 milligrams. That's the generic Pepsid. And cimetidine, which is Tagamet, the 200 milligram or 300 milligram dose is equivalent. When you have reflux, read the Stages of Reflux and Recovery blog. It's the one nobody reads. But it talks about the idea of stopping reflux long enough to let the valves in the esophagus, esophageal valves, heal. And so there's a point at which you can taper your H2 antagonists. And what I recommend with tapering all of these things is you drop one dose a month starting in the morning. So after breakfast, lunch, dinner, and bed. So first week you stop the breakfast one, then you stop the lunch one, then you stop the dinner one. And you might want to keep the bed one for another month or two. If maybe you go out a little late one night, you're going to take a famotidine, even after you're off it, a famotidine before you go, two before you go to bed. You're going to take Gaviscon and elevate your bed. So you always have it there sort of on an ad hoc basis. But the answer is when your symptoms are well, you can taper. And all medicines, I generally taper at one dose a month. And the same with the Gaviscon. Start in the morning, it's just mostly nocturnal reflux or nighttime reflux. The best way to diagnose LPR, oh brother. Pepsin testing is useless. Remember, it's my test. I have the plaque still here. I patented the Pepsin detection test in 1999. There it is. And Peter Detmar in England, the PEP test is probably not terribly useful because everyone's going to be positive sometime and everyone's going to be negative sometime, and one spot moment with a sample sent across the ocean that's tested 2 weeks later. So then we get to pH monitoring. Most of the gastroenterologists are using impedance testing. I used impedance testing for years, 3 years, and it wasn't very good for LPR. So what I then did is I went to using custom pH probes, and I put an ISFET chip. An ISFET chip is in the pH meter that you bought for $200, custom. And so I'm the only, and we're going to review all my data. I got thousands and thousands of people who had pH. It's the only data that's absolutely proof positive of what happened in the throat is that kind of pH testing. And since Medicare doesn't reimburse enough for the disposable, there's no one doing good reflux testing. The answer is fill out the reflux symptom index, educate yourself. Those of you who have LPR are going to have to, for most of you, figure out that you have it and then figure out how to get rid of it. My blog, by the way, November 2nd is my 75th birthday. I'm trying to get everything I know in the blogosphere. Now I'm gonna slow down blogging until I get the book done, Respiratory Reflux, How Silent Reflux Causes Respiratory Disease and Why the U.S. Healthcare is Failing. That's the rest of the title. So I'm going to try to get that done as a priority and maybe not do quite as much blogging. So the diagnosis of LPR is going to have to be done by an ENT examination. And again, doctors in ENT tend to fall into two groups. One thinks everyone has reflux and one thinks no one has reflux. I have people who come to me with rip-roaring LPR or respiratory reflux who have seen a famous doctor who said everything looked fine. So good luck. A lot of you are going to be on your own. Last two questions. Red meat. So Tina has a problem with low iron, and the problem with red meat, she wants to know, is fat. Absolutely, it's the fat. Fat makes the lower valve relax. If you want to have reflux, have a cheeseburger with bacon and fries, and then have a Coke too. Make it a double or a triple. I wrote about that. Some of those sandwiches are 1,400 calories. So that's the low-fat meats, and I don't recommend beef. And she ought to be taking an iron supplement, and iron, I think it comes in a gluconate, which is better than the sulfate. So the final question is the reflux diet for life? And the answer is no. It's not a chronic disease. Read the section on the blog on the stage of reflux and recovery. Read about trigger foods and how to identify them. And a lot of my blog is there now. If you just go all posts, you can see the topics and click on the ones that you want. So I'm signing off, and I'll see you all next time, November 2nd. And I thank you for your patience. And I've done a soliloquy for 30 minutes. Bye.